So you've seen my two main interests, Russia, former Soviet Union, and environment. And it all came together in Chernobyl. Quite a few of the images that I'm going to show are in the exhibit as well. And the exhibit has detailed captions, detailed legends, what you see there. So I will try to, those pictures that I'm showing here, to tell other stories than what's already there in the exhibit. This image is taken in the center of Pripyat. It is on the hotel balcony of the Policia Hotel in the center of Pripyat, and you see how close the reactor was to that city of 50,000 people or town of 50,000 people that was only erected for the workers of the Chernobyl power plant and their families. It's 2.5 kilometers away from the power plant itself. I think the younger people may not know that the Chernobyl reactor that blew up in 1986 had 4 blocks, 4 reactors. Only the reactor number 4 exploded. There were another 3 reactors. The last reactor went only offline in the year 2000. Until the year 2000, reactor number 3 was still working, and people were coming in and out on a daily basis. When I first photographed in 1993, I was not allowed inside the reactor. I was with the police, with the militia, and they drove me around. They had actually organized a bus, a school bus. So my assistant and I were in a school bus, but we were not allowed inside the reactor. Now, in front of the reactor, with a fence and barbed wire, I jumped on the roof of the bus. The police didn't mind, but the guards really didn't like it. So I pretended to be the stupid foreigner, "Ja nie poнимаю по-русски," until one of the guards, dressed in white protective gear, pointed the gun at me. And I tell you, a gun is a very convincing argument. So I had to jump down. But in 2005, after the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, I got access to go inside the reactor. I had a wonderful fixer. The people in the administration said, "How did you get that permission? Your fixer can walk through walls." Was that the first warning for the end? And so I went with this troop of 6 workers in total. There were 6, plus me, who were only allowed to work a single shift of 15 minutes a day in the area that we went to. The first time I went with them, it took already half an hour for us to wait in a higher contaminated area because the dishonaya with the key for the protective gear had disappeared. After half an hour, then we finally got our protective gear. Of course, I was unable to wear a gas mask because you can't photograph with a gas mask on. We rushed through dimly lit tunnels. We stumbled over wires and radioactive debris on our way. And then we finally got to a point where they were working their shift. After a bit more than half of the time, our Geiger counters and dosimeters started to beep, warning us that our time was up. So we I did that a couple of times with them. This is the control room of reactor number 4 where the fatal accident happened. It is not as contaminated, so I could stay there for half an hour. And this was the reactor number 3, the one that was still working in 1993. And those of you that have seen the HBO series where one of the guys goes out into the hallway and smokes a cigarette, they didn't go out to smoke. They actually smoked in the control room. And that was the cars, the bumper cars that were readied for the May Day celebrations, and they were sitting there, and the whole thing is rotting away more and more. Because the accident happened on the 26th of April, they were getting ready for the May Day celebration. So, and that was me going in there. That's how I was dressed up with the protective gear. And I often get asked, were you afraid? When you photograph in a situation like this, you have to fully concentrate. You have to be fully concentrate, and you cannot think about fear. The fear comes later. I made a few really bad mistakes during my first trips. I went inside, and you have the dirty area and the clean area where you leave your clothing. Then you get into your protective gear, and then when you get out, you take your shower again. You take the longest showers in your life. But what I forgot is to clean my equipment. Only at one of the later times when I went in, I asked the lady who, you do these checks where you check the sole of your shoes and your hands. And I asked her to check my equipment. And she gave me this look, another foreigner that wants that thinks he's been radiated. Because she couldn't imagine that a foreigner was able to go so deep inside. But then she checked it, and all of a sudden her attitude changed, and she said, "Oh my God, what's going on here? What's going on here?" And then we told her where we had been, and then she said, "I had this Velcro," you know what Velcro is, around the strobe, and that had accumulated the radioactive dust. Then she said, "You have to throw that out and leave it here, take it off and leave it here." And the camera straps had accumulated radioactive dust, and she said, as soon as you get home, you have to wash them, and then you wipe your camera with wet towels to get the dust off, and then you throw out the towels in the trash. But I had not done that in previous visits. Which of course is great, because now you can see me as the only person in the dark, and I can use myself as a light source. Now I don't need a flash anymore. I'm making these jokes just to make myself not being afraid. And I was told that I need to hurry up. This is deep inside the reactor. That was the highest contaminated point I've been to. I was with an engineer on a trip that lasted half an hour, and he said, "We're going to a room, get ready." We entered that room, and it was pitch black dark, only lit with our headlamps. And I took a series of pictures with a strobe, wanted to wait for the strobe to recycle, when he already pulled me out and said, "That's it." And I was shooting digital, and on the display I see my camera had focused with autofocus on these wires in the front. I begged him to let me go in one more time, again for a few seconds, and I photographed this situation because I had seen a clock in the back of the room that stopped working at 1:23 a.m., the moment when life stood still forever in the zone. Another room inside the leaning staircase that was built after the accident for the workers to have access for the cleanup. And this is when I had to dodge the sparks from the drillers. The new safe confinement that is covering everything up. There were these graveyards of contaminated equipment. This is all contaminated, but some of it has been sold on black markets. Nature is making a comeback, eating up the villages, and in one of the houses in the villages. The returnees that live out their lives on contaminated soil, and again, nature is taking over. With the returnees, you eat contaminated food, homegrown tomatoes on contaminated soil, and as a photographer, you have to participate and eat it because you want access. And sometimes, at the end of the day, you're as drunk as your subjects because there is not much for them to do, and when somebody comes and listens to their stories, they start drinking, and you drink with them. They're good moonshine. The landscape is beautiful, but contaminated. And once a year at midnight on the 26th, they are commemorating the innocent victims, the children. This girl has spent most of her life in the hospital, and the mother is pushing in the angel, her guardian angel. Another young boy in one of the orphanages. And Igor was nearly blind and nearly deaf, born without legs, and a whole group of children in one of the orphanages in Belarus. This man had been, his job was to destroy wells, and now he had his third thyroid cancer operation, and the young boy was feeding on berries in the forest a lot, too young to have thyroid problems. And this is what Pripyat, the main street, used to look like. The cods in which the children napped, and then 36 hours after the accident, they all of a sudden had to leave. Inside a school, that building is now collapsed because the buildings in Pripyat are starting to collapse. When Fukushima happened, I was inside the zone photographing. Time magazine wanted to send me to Fukushima, but I'm not going to Fukushima. I stay with Chernobyl because there are enough surprises in Chernobyl all the time. The big surprise is tourism in the zone. That was a few years ago before the confinement was pushed over. The tour guide says don't step on the grass because it's higher contaminated. And the tour guides want to enhance the experience by wearing a contact lens with a radioactive sign. Another tourist brought a gas mask along just for the kick to be photographed. But there are legitimate tourists, and those come from Japan because they are interested what is going to happen to Fukushima in 20, 30 years. But then for others, they hang up the gas masks so that elderly tourists don't need to bend down to photograph the gas masks on the floor because they are too old to go down. So they just go up. And these are still lifes created not by tourists, but by tour guides. And every doll is next to a gas mask, or really weird stuff is created in the fantasy of tourists. This I have seen alter several times Every book is open on a page with Lenin and a doll or a gas mask next to it. Lenin, Marx, and you feel this is set up. After a while, the chalk is coming from the ceiling and it creates a patina, and the next tourist thinks that's been like this. And I've shot a whole series of these images where you see the destruction and you feel that it is set up. That is the book, a bit of shameless advertising. Okay, that's it.